I'm digging into this printer a little more deeply here. I've wiped it down with a rag with some Pantang oil to start to clean it up a bit. And I extracted some of the old receipt paper that was stuck inside the machine. And you can see the Charvat Florist logo, or the old logo rather, printed on here. And I removed this thing, which is the there's some florist wire holding this spring made of florist wire in there. Obviously a repair made in-house. And here is the I guess it goes like this. The roller and cutter. My understanding is this is the knife here that cuts the paper and perforates it. So that is definitely a cool piece. There's the ink, and so what we're going to have to do is this piece here, this whole thing comes off. This is where the ink is. So I believe that screw and that screw. I think this piece will pop off, and then this whole thing is going to come right out. We're with the ink rollers on it and everything. Here are the ink rollers. And they're sort of dangling because they interface with the other side of the register. So we'll give that a go, because I want to remove the ink, and then I'm going to put the clean this with acetone. I'll also remove this counter. That's supposed to be removed when the piece gets taken apart, but I wasn't sure how to disassemble this thing. Okay, we'll give this a go. Oh yeah, before I forget, this piece here comes out. This is one of the ink rollers. This one rolls ink onto this piece over here. So there's a little thumb thing that you can pop that out so you can replenish the ink. So I'm going to remove that, and I'll remove this next. Okay, here's the printer mechanism with the ink removed. And this paper is just totally dry, and the paper itself is ripping and stuff. It was hard to get out. A couple of things to know. Oh, there's a lot of dust in here. Is that there's this little roller in here that needs to be pulled back when you remove the ink, or else it'll get stuck on that. And then when you remove the chute, this needs to be pulled back. The chute being this thing. So this has to come out first. Then this can come out, and actually that's upside down right now. This is how it went. So yeah, pretty dry. Pretty dry. There. Okay, these are snapped in. Okay, they probably should have been snapped in as I was pulling it out, but it's all messed up. So anyway, we're going to clean this up, get the dust and grime out of here, and see where we're at. More progress here on the printer. I've cleaned all of the numbers and everything, and been working with the mechanism here. This resets the check number, apparently. Yeah, everything's looking pretty good. I'm just taking it apart one piece at a time, getting it cleaned up, and then clean it, oil it, clean it, oil it. And so this process will continue. There's not a lot here that can jam up, and everything seems to be operating very freely. So I'm not too worried about it. So everything's free, and I think it should just work when I put it back in. I did find that one of these detents popped off, so the day wheel on the date is not as good as it should be. It doesn't snap into place anymore, and I don't think that'll ever be fixed unless that gets screwed in, a part is found. But it's easy to access this, actually. So if I ever find one, I can do it without ripping apart the machine itself. And I'll just leave it there. I think it's good enough. Okay, more soon. Okay, here's the printer after cleaning, and it is definitely really clean. This mechanism looks great, and it's ready to be installed into the system. I'm just letting it drain out a little bit more here. Then, of course, over here, one thing I did was I modified the power system. The hot wire was actually connected to where neutral should be. Neutral was on the fuse, so I swapped that. Hot should always go across the fuse. And I checked it with the voltmeter, and everything is good. So next step is we're going to reinstall this hardware that belongs here and then try to fit the printer. Okay, so I've reinstalled this ink advance mechanism. This was tricky. Best thing to do is remove this thing, and this guy has a roller that follows this cam. There's this thing here grabs a little pin there, and this rides up, this piece that grabs that pin rides up and down behind this clutch wheel thing, and then of course this guy rolls inside of this wheel back here, and you have to look out for that little, there's a roller bearing that goes underneath on the pin underneath this thing. I know I'm not being very specific, but this screw here is impossible to get on unless you remove this E-clip or whatever they call these things. It's not really an E-clip. Remove that, take this assembly off, then you put the screw on. And you put this thing, clean this part while you have it apart, which I did. I just cleaned it, detailed it, and then put it back on. And now it's working, so I'll just run it once. And you can see what it should be doing. Advancing the ink roll. And I suspect it does a few other things, actually. So we'll just keep going on this thing. And keep adding the pieces. Okay, this was tricky. This thing here, which has to do with, I believe, how we eject the checks and all that sort of thing, these dots obviously have to line up, but this cam needs to be in this position. Now, underneath here, you could pop this clutch off, on and off easily. There's two alignment marks, and I was on the wrong alignment mark. One of them has to do with this gear, which is aligned, and the other one has to do with this one. So you just rotate it till you get to the right one. The cash register will not allow you to hit the motor bar button if this is if these marks are mixed up. So it sounds cryptic, but really what the thing should look to be in this configuration when it's all set up and working. This thing rolls against this eccentric, and then this guy is lined up here. And here's what it looks like in operation. Okay, so we've put these hammers back on. Put some grease on these surfaces that you're going to get some sliding friction. Lots of grease on that thing. Everything is working.
So I can make it into a line like this, or I can make the line fatter.
Okay, here we go. Oops. Let's see. Oh no. Okay, something's jammed. A couple things. One, this spring is hard to see, but it's behind here, so you got to remember to put this spring, and this whole thing becomes an assembly. There's also this wheel, that flat part needs to be up, so all this stuff gets reset, and you have to fiddle about with the phase of that clutch in there, which angle it's at. I spent quite a bit of time, otherwise the cash register won't reset properly and let you run it. So those are a couple tricks. And right here, there's a little ring that goes there that you put in the last minute. So that's what that part's for, so you don't have any leftover pieces. Okay, let's try that again. So set the thing up, and this down enables the printer, so you'll see this thing will work when it's down. When it's up, it won't. So down, and let's crank it. There we go, and then we turn off the printer, and you shouldn't see this move much. Yeah, only this one moved. Okay, good. Everything's working. I wear safety glasses when I iterate this, when I rotate it right now, because a lot of these pieces are held in place by the printer mechanism, so I don't want anything flying off into my face. So that's a safety tip. I mean, there's a lot of stored energy in these springs. So I'm going to put, I'm going to spray this down Tri-Flow, and then I'm going to hit it with, I'm going to put the printer on. Okay, so I've got a new workshop set up for this now, and we're going to work on this thing. I think the fundamental problem with the printer is that for some reason these wheels aren't lining up with the correct output and aligned with the display. So I'm going to disassemble. I talked to an old cash register repair guy, and he says don't ever take the printer off. But we've already gone that far, so I'm going to actually remove this thing and just get the remove all these wheels and try to get those things to line up. I'll reassemble it, and I'll reassemble all these wheels back onto the register after post haste. That way they're all correct. That's what I'll do. Okay, so how to inspect whether or not I'm on the correct pins. You just can't get in there, so I've got a bore scope here, and I could see that I've made contact with the correct pins and that everything is in the right spot. But this is really tricky. I can't do it with one hand, but just to give you a sense of what you have to do to verify. And here's the little bore scope thing. It's a cool tool. It's really useful. And it's one of those inexpensive tools made overseas. And it's handy for putting this printer in. Okay, so what I'm seeing is this lever, which goes to, it's hard to point to things, to this piece, right here, which stops the little number wheels, is out of phase. That lever goes so hard to see. You can't even see that. All the way into there. So that piece is out of phase. There's alignment marks. I think they're mixed up. So I'm going to swap those, see if I can get them back in phase. That's what's binding it up right now. So here's the culprit. I had to swap this. The marks are the same here and here. And I swapped the gear around. So I think that this is now the correct phase for this gear. So the next step will be to check it with the rest of the system. But unfortunately I have to pull all this stuff off to get there. Okay, so I figured out the root cause of the jamming. It's this little lever holds these things in place when these things hit. And so the gear, the wheel underneath here was, it's impossible to see it. Right there was out of phase. There's two markers, one to align it with the wheel here, one to align it with this wheel. And I had to flip it around. So I also greased some more stuff up because there's a lot of torque on some of these sliding surfaces. But that should do it. We'll put the printer on, see if it's not jamming. Okay, I finally got all the stuff from the printer unclogged, so here we go. And 1, 2, 3, 4. So all the print wheels are moving. All this stuff is, of course, fine. And nothing's jammed. I've also been doing it manually. But it's kind of fun to use the motor as well. Okay, so I've reinstalled this thing here, and time for my handy dandy spring that somebody made back in the day to hold this thing in place. Mount that there. I had to remove the printer again to check the phase of the throwout over here. It should follow this. So let's see. We got, okay, doesn't look terribly out of phase. All right, because this thing is not spinning over here, so we'll have to figure this out. So this tool is awesome. I've got a probe in here, and I'm watching this wheel right there and there, and trying to understand why it won't rotate. See, that's just stuck. And what the little bits are doing as I rotate it in situ. This is a very handy and inexpensive tool. Okay, so I think I figured it out. This mechanism here was in a bad state. So I had to move this around till this thing snapped back here like that. And now this is loose. So I believe that's what was driving this to be stuck, because the phase of this clutch thing is correct. So now this is loose. We'll put the printer back on and see if it works.